Judge denied veteran single dad custody of little girl his Navy SEAL past made her panic. A father fought for his little girl, but when the judge said no, the shocking truth came out. Her terror wasn't of losing him, but of the nightmares his past still carried. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Jack Reynolds sat rigid in the hardwood courtroom chair, his weathered hands gently holding his daughter Emily's small fingers. The morning sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. His navy blue suit felt too tight around his neck, but he'd wanted to look his best today. Emily's pink dress matched the ribbon in her hair, the one her mother had given her before she passed. The courtroom was quiet except for the shuffle of papers and the occasional cough. Jack's heart beat steadily, years of military training helping him maintain his composure. He had prepared for this moment, just like he had prepared for countless missions before. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was about keeping his little girl. Emily squeezed his hand and looked up at him with trusting brown eyes. "Daddy, are you okay?" she whispered. Her voice was so soft, so innocent. Jack managed a smile, though his chest felt tight. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about? Just tell the truth when they ask you questions." Judge Harmon cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. His stern face gave nothing away as he adjusted his reading glasses and picked up a document from his desk. The fluorescent lights gleamed off his silver hair. Having reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented, Judge Harmon began, his voice echoing in the quiet chamber. "I must make my ruling with the child's best interest at heart." Jack sat up straighter, squeezing Emily's hand gently. He had done everything right. Kept a stable job, maintained a clean house, attended every parent-teacher conference. His service record was exemplary. Surely that counted for something. "Mr. Reynolds," the judge continued, looking directly at Jack, "your dedication to your country and your obvious love for your daughter are not in question here." Jack felt a flutter of hope, but it died as soon as he saw the judge's expression darken. "However, the evidence presented regarding Emily's recurring panic attacks is deeply concerning." Judge Harmon paused, removing his glasses. "The night terrors she experiences, triggered by your own combat-related nightmares, cannot be ignored." The words hit Jack like physical blows. He hadn't realized how much his nightmares were affecting Emily. She had never said anything, and he'd thought he was protecting her by keeping his struggles private. "Daddy?" Emily's voice quivered beside him. "The court has received testimony from Emily's school counselor about her falling asleep in class, about her anxiety during the day." The judge's voice was firm but not unkind. "A child needs consistent, uninterrupted sleep. She needs to feel safe in her own home." Jack wanted to protest, to explain that he was getting help, that he could do better, but his throat felt too tight to speak. Emily's grip on his hand tightened. "Therefore, it is the decision of this court to grant temporary custody to Emily's maternal grandparents, Robert and Margaret Wilson, effective immediately." The words seemed to echo in Jack's ears. He felt the room tilt slightly, but his military training kept him upright and composed, even as his world crumbled around him. "No," Emily whispered, her small body pressing against his side. "No, please. Mr. Reynolds will have supervised visitation rights, to be arranged through the court-appointed liaison." Judge Harmon's gavel came down with a sharp crack that made Emily jump. People began moving around them. Lawyers gathering papers, court officers approaching, Emily's grandparents rising from their seats with expressions of careful relief. But Jack remained still, trying to process what had just happened. "Mr. Reynolds," his lawyer murmured, touching his shoulder, "we need to review the visitation schedule." Jack nodded mechanically, but his focus was entirely on Emily, who had begun to cry silently beside him. He turned in his chair and gathered her into his arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs. "Shh, baby girl," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "It's going to be okay." "I want to stay with you," she hiccuped against his shoulder. "I know, sweetheart, I know." He stroked her hair, trying to memorize how it felt, how she smelled of strawberry shampoo and grape juice. Robert and Margaret Wilson approached, their faces a mixture of sympathy and determination. Margaret reached for Emily, but Jack stood first, still holding his daughter. "Please," he said quietly, "let me walk her out." After a moment's hesitation, they nodded, and Jack carried Emily through the courthouse halls. Her arms were wrapped tight around his neck, her face buried against his shoulder. Each step felt heavier than the last. Outside, the spring air was cool and fresh, a cruel contrast to the suffocating weight in Jack's chest. The Wilson silver sedan waited at the curb, its back door already open. Jack stood there for a moment, holding his daughter, trying to find the right words. Emily lifted her head, her face streaked with tears. "Don't let them take me, Daddy," she whispered, her fingers clutching his suit jacket. "Please don't let them take me." Jack had to swallow hard before he could speak. "Listen to me, Emily." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, her mother's eyes. "I promise you, I'm going to fight for you. I'm not giving up. Do you understand?" She nodded, though fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you more than anything in this world," he continued, his voice growing hoarse. "Nothing will ever change that. Not distance, not time, not any judge's decision. Okay? I love you too, Daddy," she whispered back, hugging him fiercely one more time. The empty house echoed with each of Jack's heavy footsteps as he walked through the front door. Evening shadows stretched across the living room, painting dark shapes on the walls. He didn't bother turning on the lights. The darkness felt fitting. His fingers fumbled with his tie, loosening the knot that had been choking him all day. The navy blue suit jacket, the one he'd bought specially for court, landed on the couch with a soft thump. Jack sank down beside it, his body feeling twice its normal weight. Family photos covered the walls and side tables, countless frozen moments of happiness. Emily's gap-toothed kindergarten picture smiled at him from beside the TV. Next to it, Sarah, his late wife, held a newborn Emily in the hospital, both of them glowing with joy. The sight made his chest ache. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Sarah's image. "I promised to keep her safe, and I failed." The silence pressed in around him. No cartoons playing in the background. No little feet padding down the hallway. No bedtime stories to read. Just emptiness where his daughter should be. Jack's hand found the small wooden box on the coffee table, the one containing his service medals. He traced the carved eagle on its lid, remembering the pride he'd felt earning each commendation. Distinguished Service Cross, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, proof of his courage, his leadership, his sacrifice. "Fat lot of good they do now," he muttered. The room grew darker as night crept in. Jack stayed on the couch, still in his dress shirt and slacks, surrounded by memories. His eyes grew heavy, but he fought sleep. He knew what waited in his dreams. Eventually, exhaustion won. The nightmare started like they always did, with dust and heat and the taste of sand in his mouth. The convoy rolled through narrow streets, buildings pressing in on both sides. Too close, too many shadows. His team was counting on him. They trusted him to keep them safe. The explosion came from nowhere and everywhere. Metal screamed. Bodies flew. Blood on his hands. So much blood. As he tried to save them, their faces morphed into Emily's, her small body broken and bleeding while he stood helpless, useless. Jack jerked awake with a hoarse cry, his shirt soaked with sweat. The metals box had fallen, spilling its contents across the floor. His hands shook as he picked up the scattered pieces of his former glory. "No wonder she's terrified," he whispered, remembering Emily's face in court. How many nights had she laid awake, listening to him fight battles that never ended? How many times had his demons invaded her dreams? The magnitude of his failure crushed down on him. He was supposed to protect her, but instead, his broken pieces were cutting her. What kind of father terrorizes his own child? The phone's sharp ring cut through his dark thoughts, making him jump. Jack stared at it, tempted to let it go to voicemail. But something, maybe hope, maybe desperation, made him answer. "Hello?" His voice was rough from sleep. "Jack, it's Maria, from next door." Her warm voice carried traces of her Mexican accent. "I heard about what happened in court today. I'm so sorry." Jack pressed his fingers against his eyes, fighting back the burn of tears. "Thanks," he managed. "I made too much chicken casserole for dinner," Maria continued. "I thought maybe you could use some company and a hot meal." His first instinct was to refuse. He didn't deserve kindness, didn't want pity. But Maria's gentle offer held no judgment, just genuine concern. And the thought of facing another minute alone with his failures. Jack's voice caught. He cleared his throat and tried again. "That would be nice, Maria. Thank you. I'll be over in 5 minutes," she said softly. Just long enough to let it cool. Jack hung up and looked around the dark room. Sarah's picture caught his eye again, and for a moment, he could almost hear her voice. "Let people help, soldier. You don't have to fight every battle alone." With a deep breath, he stood and walked to the light switch. The room brightened, pushing back the shadows. Outside, a porch light came on at Maria's house, and Jack felt something small but vital stir in his chest. Hope, maybe, or at least the courage to try one more time. The doorbell's chime startled Jack from his daze. He'd been sitting in his recliner for hours, staring at Emily's empty backpack by the door. The house felt too quiet without her cheerful chatter and the patter of her small feet. Through the peephole, he saw Maria Lopez standing on his front porch, holding what looked like a covered casserole dish. The porch light cast a warm glow around her, making her seem almost angelic in her simple blue dress and cardigan. Jack opened the door, forcing a polite smile. "Evening, Maria." "I brought dinner," she said, lifting the dish slightly. "And before you say no, I made far too much anyway. It would be a shame to let it go to waste." The smell of home-cooked chicken and spices wafted toward him, making his stomach growl. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. He watched as Maria walked straight to his kitchen, moving with the confidence of someone who'd been there before. She had, of course, bringing meals when Sarah passed, watching Emily sometimes when he had appointments. "Sit," she instructed, pulling plates from the cabinet like she owned the place. "When did you last eat something that didn't come from a box?" Jack slumped into a kitchen chair. "I'm not really hungry." "Didn't ask if you were hungry." Maria set a steaming plate in front of him. "Asked when you last ate real food." The corner of his mouth twitched despite himself. Maria had a way of cutting through his defenses with her motherly directness. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Maria spoke again. "The church has a veterans support group, you know." Jack's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Maria, they meet Tuesday nights. Many of them have seen combat. Some have PTSD, too." "I don't need Jack Reynolds," Maria interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "That little girl needs her daddy, and her daddy needs help." The words hit him like a physical blow. He set his fork down, pushing the plate away. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't tried?" His voice cracked. "The VA prescribed medications. I've done the breathing exercises. Nothing stops the nightmares. Have you tried talking to someone? Really talking?" Jack's jaw clenched. The phone on the counter began to ring, saving him from answering. His heart leaped when he saw the caller ID, Emily's grandparents' number. "Emily," he answered, voice softening instantly. "Hi, Daddy." Her small voice made his chest ache. "Grandma said I could call before bedtime." "I'm so glad you did, sweetheart. How are you?" "Okay." Grandma made spaghetti. A pause, but it wasn't as good as yours. Jack closed his eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "I miss you, baby girl." "Miss you too." He could hear the tremor in her voice. "When can I come home?" The question felt like a knife to his heart. "Soon, honey. Daddy's working on it, I promise." "Okay," she sniffled. "Grandma says it's bedtime now. Sweet dreams, Emily. I love you so much." "Love you too, Daddy." The line went dead, and Jack stood frozen, phone pressed to his ear, listening to the silence. When he finally lowered it, his hand was shaking. Maria hadn't moved from the table, watching him with understanding eyes. "That's the hardest part, isn't it? The goodnight calls?" Something broke inside Jack. He sank back into his chair, covering his face with his hands. "I can't lose her, Maria. She's all I have left." "Then fight for her," Maria said softly. "Not just in court. Fight the demons that are keeping you apart." "I don't know how," he whispered, and it was the most honest he'd been with anyone since Sarah died. "Every night, I see things. Terrible things. And Emily hears me. She's scared of her own father. She's not scared of you, Jack. She's scared for you." Maria reached across the table, touching his arm. "The group meets at 7 on Tuesdays. Just think about it." Jack nodded slowly, not committing, but not refusing either. They finished their meal in thoughtful silence, and Maria packed up the leftovers, leaving clear instructions for reheating. At the door she paused. "You're a good father, Jack Reynolds. Don't let anyone tell you different, not even yourself." He watched from his darkened living room as Maria crossed the short distance to her house next door. Her porch light clicked on, casting a warm glow across her front steps. She waved once before disappearing inside. Jack stood at his window, looking at that light. Maria's words echoed in his mind. "You're a good father." For the first time since the courthouse, he felt something other than despair, a tiny spark of possibility. Someone believed in him. Maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn of the Morrison family home. Jack Reynolds sat in his truck, gripping the steering wheel as he stared at the two-story colonial where his in-laws lived. The house looked perfect, pristine white paint, meticulously trimmed hedges, and cheerful flower beds that his mother-in-law, Margaret, tended daily. He glanced at the small stuffed penguin on the passenger seat, Emily's favorite animal. She'd left it at home the day of the court hearing. Taking a deep breath, Jack grabbed the toy and stepped out of his truck. Before he could reach the front door, it opened. Robert Morrison, Emily's grandfather, stood in the doorway wearing pressed khakis and a polo shirt. His silver hair was neatly combed, his expression carefully neutral. "Jack," Robert said with a curt nod. "Emily's in the living room. Thanks for letting me visit, Robert." Jack tried to keep his voice steady, professional-like, reporting to a superior officer. Margaret appeared behind her husband, her thin lips pressed into a tight line. "We have bridge club at 2, so you'll need to wrap up by then." Jack nodded, following them into their immaculate living room. Emily sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by coloring books and crayons. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Daddy!" She jumped up and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Jack knelt down, hugging her close. She smelled like strawberry shampoo, the kind Margaret always bought, not the apple-scented one they used at home. "Hey, Princess! Look what I brought you!" He held out the stuffed penguin. Emily's eyes widened. "Mr. Waddles, I thought I lost him!" She clutched the toy to her chest. Margaret cleared her throat. "Emily, sweetheart, why don't you show your father the picture you drew this morning?" Emily nodded eagerly, pulling Jack by the hand to her artwork spread across the coffee table.
"Look, Daddy, I drew our whole family."
She pointed to the crayon figures. "There's you and me and Grandma and Grandpa, and there's Mommy in heaven with the angels." Jack's throat tightened as he studied the drawing. The figure representing him wore green, his old military uniform. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Robert and Margaret sat stiffly on their floral print sofa, watching every interaction like hawks. Jack could feel their disapproval radiating across the room. "Emily's been sleeping much better here," Margaret said pointedly. "No nightmares." Jack's jaw clenched, but he kept his focus on Emily. "That's good to hear. Daddy?" Emily's voice got quiet. "Are you still having bad dreams?" The innocent question hit him like a punch to the gut. From the corner of his eye, he saw Robert and Margaret exchange knowing looks. "I'm working on it, Princess," Jack said softly. "I'm trying to get better." Emily nodded, her small face serious. "Grandma says sometimes soldiers have scary dreams because they see scary things." "That's right," Jack managed. "But I'm talking to people who can help me with that now." "Emily," Margaret interrupted, "why don't you show your father the new dollhouse Grandpa bought you?" Emily's face brightened. "Oh yes, it's in my room!" She grabbed Jack's hand again, leading him up the stairs. The guest room had been transformed into a little girl's paradise. Pink walls, white furniture, and more toys than Emily had ever had at home. An elaborate Victorian dollhouse sat in the corner, complete with tiny furniture and dolls. "Wow," Jack said, trying to hide the ache in his chest. "That's quite something." "Grandpa got it yesterday." Emily demonstrated how the roof opened, showing him all the miniature rooms. "Can I bring it home when I come back?" The question hung in the air. Jack swallowed hard. "We'll see, Princess." Emily's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "When can I come home, Daddy?" "Soon," he promised, though he wasn't sure if it was true. "I just need to make sure everything's ready for you." "Ready how?" She looked confused. "Well," Jack struggled to find the right words. "Remember how we talked about Daddy getting help for his bad dreams?" Emily nodded, clutching Mr. Waddles tighter. "That's part of getting ready. I want you to feel safe at home." "I do feel safe with you," Emily said, but her voice wavered slightly. "Just not when you yell in your sleep." Jack's heart cracked. "I know, Princess. I'm so sorry about that." "Emily!" Margaret's voice called from downstairs. "Time for lunch." Emily hesitated, looking between the door and Jack. "Will you stay for lunch, Daddy?" Before Jack could answer, Margaret appeared in the doorway. Your father probably has things to do, dear. And remember, we have bridge club soon. Emily's shoulders slumped. Okay. She hugged Jack fiercely. Will you come back tomorrow? Jack looked at Margaret, who pressed her lips together before giving a small nod. Of course I will, he told Emily. Downstairs, Robert stood by the front door, clearly ready to end the visit. Emily's doing well here, he said quietly as Jack prepared to leave. She needs stability, Jack. Structure. She needs her father, Jack replied, keeping his voice low. She needs to feel safe, Margaret added, joining them. Your military trauma. It's affecting her more than you realize. Jack straightened his spine, looking them both in the eye. I'm getting help. I'm doing everything I can to make this right. For Emily's sake, I hope so, Robert said. Jack hugged Emily one last time, promising to return tomorrow. She waved from the doorway as he walked to his truck, Mr. Waddles tucked under her arm. The drive home felt longer than usual. Jack's mind raced with images of Emily in her new pink room, surrounded by expensive toys, sleeping peacefully without the echo of his nightmares. His in-laws could give her everything: stability, comfort, security. What could he offer, except broken pieces of himself? Almost without conscious thought, he pulled into the empty parking lot of St. Michael's Church. The white cross on top seemed to glow in the late morning Sunday. Jack turned off the engine and sat in silence, staring at the symbol of faith he'd struggled with since losing his wife, since coming home from war. Lord, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. What do I do now? Jack's phone buzzed while he was organizing Emily's room for the 100th time. Her stuffed animal sat in neat rows on her bed, waiting for her return. His hands trembled as he answered the call, seeing Maria's name on the screen. Jack, I've been thinking about your situation all night. Maria's warm voice came through. I want to help. I'll testify about the kind of father you really are. He sank onto Emily's small purple chair, his weight making the plastic creak. Maria, I don't know what to say. Then just listen, she said firmly but kindly. I've watched you with Emily for 3 years now. One difficult period doesn't erase all the love and dedication you've shown. Remember last winter when she had the flu? You stayed up 4 nights straight, reading her stories and checking her temperature. Jack's throat tightened as he glanced at the stack of picture books on Emily's shelf. The judge doesn't see any of that. All they see is a father who needs support, not punishment, Maria interrupted. The court needs to hear from people who know the real you, who see how you've raised that little girl on your own since Sarah passed. Sunlight streamed through Emily's window, catching the silver frame on her dresser. It held a photo of Jack teaching Emily to ride her bike, his hands steady on the seat as she beamed with pride. The supervised visit is in an hour, Jack said, checking his watch. At Palmer Park. Perfect timing then. This will give you something positive to focus on. You're not alone in this fight, Jack. After hanging up, Jack felt lighter than he had in days. Maria's words had cleared away some of the darkness that had been clouding his mind. He grabbed Emily's jacket, the pink one with butterflies she loved, and headed out. Palmer Park was quiet for a Saturday afternoon. The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves, and the playground equipment gleamed under the gentle Sunday. Jack spotted Emily sitting with the court-appointed supervisor near the swings. Daddy! Emily's face lit up as she ran to him, her brown pigtails bouncing. He scooped her up, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Hey, princess, want to try the monkey bars today? Emily nodded enthusiastically. I've been practicing at Grandma's house. Watch. Jack followed her to the playground, keeping a respectful distance from the supervisor who maintained a watchful eye. Emily reached for the first bar, her small face determined as she swung forward. Look, Daddy, I can do 3 now. That's amazing, sweetheart. Jack's heart swelled with pride as she made it to the 3rd bar before dropping safely to her feet. They spent the afternoon playing like they used to, racing down slides, building castles in the sandbox, and sharing a pack of fruit snacks on a sunny bench. Emily's giggles filled the air as Jack pushed her on the swing, each laugh a precious gift he stored away in his memory. Higher, Daddy, I want to touch the clouds. Not too high, he chuckled, giving gentle pushes. We don't want you flying away just yet. The supervisor seemed to relax as she watched their natural interaction, even smiling when Emily showed off her cartwheel attempts on the grass. Too soon, the visit was coming to an end. Jack helped Emily put on her jacket as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the park. Time to head back to Grandma and Grandpa's. the supervisor said gently. Jack led Emily to his truck, where he'd installed the borrowed car seat from his in-laws. As he carefully adjusted the straps around her shoulders, Emily's small hand touched his cheek. "Daddy?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes, sweetheart. I get scared when you scream at night." The words hit him like a physical blow. Jack's hands froze on the car seat buckle as he looked into his daughter's innocent eyes. She wasn't angry or accusatory, just honest in that pure way that only children can be. He pulled her into a tight hug, his heart pounding against his ribs. Emily's small arms wrapped around his neck, holding on just as fiercely. "I love you, Daddy," she mumbled into his shoulder. Jack held her close, unable to find words past the lump in his throat. The supervisor waited patiently by her car, giving them this moment of privacy. The courthouse's marble floors echoed with each step as Jack made his way to courtroom B. His polished dress shoes, the ones he'd worn to his wedding, clicked against the cold stone. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the hallway. Maria walked beside him, her gentle presence a small comfort. She carried a folder of character reference letters from neighbors and church members. Jack's hands were sweating, but he kept his posture straight, a habit from his military days. "Remember," Maria whispered, "just breathe and speak from your heart." Inside the courtroom, Emily's grandparents, the Hendersons, sat on the opposite side. Mrs. Henderson held Emily close, while Mr. Henderson's stern gaze never left Jack. Emily wore the blue dress Jack had bought her for her last birthday, her small feet barely touching the floor from the wooden bench. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Harmon entered. The proceedings began with the Hendersons' lawyer presenting their case. She was a sharp-dressed woman with reading glasses that caught the fluorescent light as she spoke. "Your Honor, we're requesting an extension of the temporary custody order," she stated, pulling out a thick manila folder. "We have documentation of Emily's continued anxiety and fear responses, particularly concerning her father's night terrors." Jack's stomach twisted as the lawyer produced Emily's doctor's notes. The words jumped off the page as they were read aloud. "Patient exhibits signs of acute anxiety, sleep disturbances, correlation with father's PTSD episodes." Emily shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and Jack's heart ached watching her grandmother stroke her hair soothingly, a gesture that should have been his to give. "Furthermore," the lawyer continued, "Emily's teachers have noted improved behavior and decreased anxiety since staying with her grandparents. She's sleeping through the night, participating more in class." "Objection, Your Honor," Jack's lawyer interrupted. "These improvements could be temporary, simply due to the change in environment. Mr. Reynolds has been nothing but a loving father." Judge Harmon raised his hand. "I understand both positions." His eyes settled on Jack. "Mr. Reynolds, please approach." Jack stood, his legs feeling like lead. The judge's bench seemed miles away as he walked forward. "Mr. Reynolds, I've reviewed your service record. Distinguished career, decorated veteran, exemplary leadership." Judge Harmon's voice was firm but not unkind. "But I've also reviewed the psychological evaluations submitted by both parties. Have you sought any professional help for your PTSD?" Jack swallowed hard. "No, Your Honor. I thought I could handle it on my own." The judge's expression softened slightly. "Being a good father isn't just about love, Mr. Reynolds. It's about creating a safe environment. Your daughter's well-being must come first." Emily's small voice suddenly piped up from the gallery. "Daddy?" Everyone turned. She had slipped away from her grandmother and now stood in the aisle, her blue dress wrinkled, her eyes wide with concern. "Please remain seated, young lady," Judge Harmon said gently, but his expression had changed. Something in Emily's spontaneous reaction seemed to affect him. After a moment of consideration, he spoke. "Here's my ruling. The temporary custody arrangement will continue with the Hendersons for the next 60 days. He held up his hand as Jack's heart sank. "However, Mr. Reynolds, I'm giving you a clear path forward. Begin regular counseling sessions, specifically trauma-focused therapy. Document your progress. Show this court you're taking concrete steps to address these issues." Jack nodded, his throat tight. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm ordering supervised visitation 3 times a week. Mr. Reynolds, this isn't punishment, it's an opportunity. Show us you're putting in the work." After the hearing, Jack stood in the courthouse hallway, watching as the Hendersons led Emily toward the exit. She looked back at him, waving sadly. Maria touched his arm. "Jack!" I know someone. A counselor who specializes in veteran PTSD. She's helped others from your unit. Jack stared at the business card Maria pressed into his hand. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Ph.D. The card was simple, professional, threatening. I can't just talk about it, he muttered. You can't just bury it either, Maria replied softly. Not anymore. Not if you want Emily back. Jack watched his daughter disappear around the corner with her grandparents. The weight of his choices past and present pressed down on him. Every nightmare, every screaming episode that had frightened Emily, every moment he tried to handle things alone, it all led here. That evening, sitting in his empty house, Jack held his phone and the business card. Emily's room across the hall was dark and silent. Her stuffed animals sat exactly where she'd left them, collecting dust. On his coffee table, a framed photo showed him and Emily at the beach last summer, both laughing as waves crashed behind them. His fingers trembled as he dialed the number. Dr. Mitchell's office. A warm voice answered. Jack cleared his throat. Yes, I'd like to schedule an appointment. I'm a veteran with PTSD. Of course. We have an opening tomorrow at 2 p.m. Would that work? Tomorrow. So soon. Jack's chest tightened, but he thought of Emily's wave goodbye in the courthouse. Yes, he said, his voice stronger than he felt. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. After hanging up, Jack sat in the growing darkness of his living room. The thought of talking about what happened overseas, of unpacking all the memories he'd carefully locked away, made his hands shake. But Emily's words echoed in his mind. Daddy, I get scared when you scream at night. He had survived war. He had led men through impossible situations. But this facing his own demons, his own mind, might be his toughest battle yet. Jack stared at the worn brass doorknob of the VA Center's meeting room. His stomach churned as muffled voices filtered through the heavy wooden door. 20 years of military training hadn't prepared him for this moment. Fighting terrorists? Sure. Talking about his feelings with strangers? That was different. The hallway smelled of coffee and floor cleaner. Motivational posters lined the cream-colored walls, showing soldiers helping other soldiers. Jack checked his watch again. 7:28 p.m. The group started at 7:30. He could still walk away. Emily's face flashed in his mind, her small voice echoing, Daddy, I get scared when you scream at night. Taking a deep breath, Jack turned the handle and stepped inside. 10 metal chairs formed a circle in the center of the room. Most were already filled with men and women in various stages of civilian dress. Some wore veteran caps, others looked like they just left office jobs. A few heads turned his way, but most kept their eyes down, lost in their own thoughts. Welcome, said a man with graying temples and kind eyes. I'm Dr. Peterson. Please, grab some coffee and join us. Jack nodded stiffly and poured himself a cup of black coffee from a pot in the corner. The styrofoam cup felt flimsy in his calloused hands. He chose an empty chair between a young woman in an army jacket and an older man with a Marine Corps tattoo on his forearm. We're just getting started, Dr. Peterson said. As always, sharing is voluntary. We're here to listen and support each other. The Marine Corps veteran spoke first. His name was Bill, and he talked about waking up thinking he was back in Fallujah. His wife had learned to sleep in another room. Jack's coffee grew cold as he listened to story after story. A woman named Sarah described panic attacks at the grocery store. A young man admitted he couldn't hold down a job because loud noises made him dive for cover. They were different stories, but Jack recognized pieces of himself in each one. The shame, the isolation, the feeling that civilian life was somehow harder than combat. Would anyone else like to share? Dr. Peterson's gentle voice broke through Jack's thoughts. The room fell quiet. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. His throat felt tight, but Emily's face appeared in his mind again. He had to try. For her, my name is Jack, he said, his voice rougher than he expected. I was a Navy SEAL for 15 years. He paused, gripping the cold coffee cup. The others waited patiently. I lost my wife to cancer 3 years ago. It's just me and my 6-year-old daughter now. Jack swallowed hard. Or it was. The court gave custody to her grandparents last week because, his voice cracked, because my nightmares terrify her. The words hung in the air. No one spoke, but Jack saw understanding in their eyes. No judgment, no criticism, just recognition. I keep seeing my team, he continued, the words coming easier now. The day we lost Thompson and Martinez, I couldn't save them. Sometimes in the dreams, it's Emily I can't save. I wake up screaming and my little girl. He set the coffee cup down before he crushed it. She shouldn't have to deal with this. She's just a kid. Sarah, the woman who'd talked about grocery store panic attacks, leaned forward. My son was 4 when I came back from Afghanistan. He used to hide under his bed when I had episodes, but we got through it. With help. With time. Bill nodded. The dreams don't go away completely, but you learn to manage them. Your daughter needs you, man. You're doing the right thing, being here. For the first time in weeks, Jack felt something loosen in his chest. These people understood. They'd walked this path before him. Dr. Peterson spoke softly. Thank you for sharing, Jack. It takes courage to admit we need help, especially when we're used to being the ones who help others. The session continued, but Jack barely heard the rest. His mind kept returning to one thought. He wasn't alone in this battle. Later that night, Jack sat at his kitchen table, a leather-bound journal open before him. Maria had suggested writing might help process his thoughts. The blank pages had intimidated him at first, but now the words flowed. Dear Emily, today I took a step toward getting better. I met other soldiers who understand what it's like to carry war home with you. They showed me it's possible to heal, to be the father you deserve. I miss your goodnight hugs. I miss reading you Goodnight Moon, even though you know all the words by heart. I miss the way you arrange your stuffed animals just so, and how you always save the purple jelly bean for last. I'm fighting a different kind of battle now, Sweet Pea. Not with guns or in far-off places, but right here at home. In my head. In my heart. And this time, I'm fighting for you. Jack closed the journal and switched off the kitchen light. His bedroom felt empty without Emily's nightlight glowing from across the hall. He lay down, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. Sleep came slowly, fitfully. The memories still lurked at the edges of his mind, but tonight they stayed shadows instead of becoming full-blown nightmares. He tossed and turned, but for the first time in weeks, he didn't wake up screaming. The afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass windows of St. Michael's Church Fellowship Hall, casting rainbow patterns across the checkered tablecloths. Jack Reynolds stood near the entrance, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. The smell of home-cooked dishes filled the air, casseroles, fresh-baked rolls, and Maria's famous enchiladas. You came, Maria said warmly, appearing at his side. She wore a cheerful blue dress and carried a ceramic dish of something that smelled like cinnamon. I'm so glad you decided to join us. Jack nodded, his eyes scanning the crowded room. Thanks for inviting me. He spotted Emily across the hall, sitting quietly between her grandparents. His daughter wore the yellow dress he'd bought her last Easter, her brown hair tied back with matching ribbons. Give it time, Maria whispered, noticing his gaze. The children's craft table is about to start. Emily loves making things. The fellowship hall buzzed with conversation and the clinking of plates. Jack recognized faces from the neighborhood, though he'd kept his distance since returning from his last deployment. Some smiled cautiously in his direction. Others pretended not to notice him. Maria set her dish down and made her way to Emily's table. Jack watched as she bent down to the little girl's level, speaking softly. Emily's face brightened at whatever Maria was saying. We're making paper butterflies, Maria announced, leading Emily toward a table covered in colored paper and craft supplies. Would anyone like to join us? Several children gathered around, including Emily, who kept glancing back at her grandparents. Mrs. Anderson, Emily's grandmother, gave a tight nod of approval. Daddy? Emily's small voice carried across the room. Do you want to make butterflies too? Jack's heart skipped. He hadn't expected her to invite him. Moving carefully, trying not to tower over the children, he pulled up a small chair next to his daughter. The plastic seat barely held his frame. I might need some help, he admitted, fumbling with a piece of purple construction paper. I was never very good at art. Emily giggled, a sound he hadn't heard in weeks. You fold it like this, she demonstrated, her small hands creating neat creases. Maria showed me how. Jack followed her instructions, making exaggerated mistakes that caused Emily to laugh even harder. Like this? He asked, holding up a crumpled attempt. No, Daddy. She took his paper and smoothed it out. "Watch me again." Other parents began gathering around the craft table, drawn by the children's laughter. Jack noticed Mrs. Anderson watching intently from her seat, her expression unreadable. Mr. Anderson remained focused on his plate of food. Maria distributed glitter and stickers, supervising with gentle guidance. "Look at Jack's butterfly," she said warmly. "It's getting better." Emily beamed with pride. "I taught him how." She reached for the glitter, accidentally knocking over a container of markers. Without thinking, Jack caught them before they rolled off the table. "Nice catch, Daddy," Emily exclaimed. "Just like when you catch me in the pool." The memory of their swimming lessons, before everything changed, hung in the air. Jack swallowed hard. "Maybe we could go swimming again sometime," he said carefully, glancing toward her grandparents. Emily's eyes lit up. "Can we, please?" "We'll see, sweetheart," Mrs. Anderson called from her table, her tone measured. "Let's finish the butterflies first." But Emily was already showing Jack how to attach pipe cleaners for antennae, her previous hesitation forgotten in the joy of teaching her father something new. Her small fingers worked confidently, and Jack marveled at how much she'd grown. "There," Emily declared, holding up their finished butterflies side by side. "Now they can fly together." Jack's throat tightened. "They sure can, sweetheart." The craft session wound down as people began packing up their leftovers. Emily helped Maria clean up the craft supplies, chattering about the butterfly she'd made for her grandparents' refrigerator. As the Andersons gathered their things, Emily clutched her butterfly creations. Jack stood awkwardly, not sure how to say goodbye. "Grandma?" Emily's voice was clear in the emptying hall. "Can I spend more time with Daddy, like we did today?" Jack froze, his heart pounding. He hadn't expected this, hadn't dared to hope for it so soon. Mrs. Anderson adjusted her purse strap, looking between Emily's hopeful face and Jack's anxious one. "We'll talk about it in the car, dear. Say goodbye to your father." Emily hugged Jack's legs tightly. "I had fun, Daddy. My butterfly will think of your butterfly every day." "I love you, Em," Jack managed, his voice rough with emotion. He watched as she skipped toward the exit, paper butterflies dancing in her hands. Maria touched his arm gently. "Baby steps, Jack. But did you see? She laughed today. Really laughed." Jack nodded, unable to speak. Through the church windows, he could see Emily climbing into her grandparents' car, still talking animatedly. She had asked to spend more time with him. After weeks of fear and distance, his daughter had asked for him. The paper butterfly in his hand was crooked, covered in too much glitter, and absolutely perfect. Like their broken little family, it wasn't what he'd planned, but it could still fly. Jack stood at the entrance of the community center, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. A banner above the door read, "Veterans Faith, Fellowship, All Welcome." The familiar military precision in how the chairs were arranged inside made his lips twitch into a small smile. "Well, look who finally showed up." Booming voice cut through the quiet evening air. Jack turned to see Mike Thompson, his old teammate from SEAL Team 6, striding toward him with open arms. Mike's beard was grayer now, but his eyes still held that same fierce determination. "Thompson," Jack nodded, accepting the crushing bear hug. "Didn't expect to see you here. Been running this group for 2 years now," Mike said, clapping Jack's shoulder. "Come on in, brother. Your family here." Inside, Jack recognized several faces from his service days. Some nodded in quiet acknowledgement, while others came forward to greet him. The atmosphere was different from the clinical setting of his VA counseling sessions. More relaxed, more familiar. "Reynolds, get over here!" another voice called out. David Chen, their former communications specialist, waved from a corner where he was setting up coffee and cookies. Jack made his way over, noticing how David's once stiff military posture had softened into something more peaceful. "Heard about Emily," David said quietly, pouring Jack a cup of coffee. "We've been praying for you, man." Jack's throat tightened. "You have? Every week," Mike joined them, pulling up chairs. "That's what we do here. We carry each other's burdens." As more veterans filtered in, they formed a circle. Jack listened as his former brothers-in-arms shared their stories. Not just of war, but of coming home, of fighting different kinds of battles. Stories of nightmares replaced by peaceful sleep, of anger transformed into patience, of broken relationships restored. The hardest part, a younger veteran named Marcus was saying, Was admitting I needed God more than I needed to be strong on my own. Jack watched as heads nodded around the circle. These were men he'd served with, men who'd faced death without flinching. Now they spoke openly about fear, about faith, about healing. Mike shared about his own journey through PTSD, his voice steady but vulnerable. "My kid used to flinch when I came into the room," he admitted. "That was my wake-up call. But here's the thing. Healing doesn't mean the memories go away. It means you learn to carry them differently." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. He thought of Emily's face, of her whispered confession about being scared of his nightmares. During a break, David approached Jack with a small book in his hands. The cover was simple: Daily Strength for Military Veterans, worn around the edges from use. "This helped me when I was where you are," David said, pressing it into Jack's hands. "It's not about forgetting what we went through, Jack. It's about learning to live forward, one day at a time." Jack ran his fingers over the book's worn spine. "I don't know if I can." "You don't have to know," Mike interrupted, joining them. "You just have to be willing to try. Remember what we used to say in training? Take the next step," Jack answered automatically, the old SEAL mantra coming back to him. "Exactly," Mike smiled. "Only now, we're not doing it alone. We've got each other, and we've got someone bigger than all of us watching our six." As the evening wound down, the men gathered closer. They shared more stories, not just of trauma, but of triumph. Of children's graduations attended, of marriages restored, of peaceful nights' sleep finally achieved. Jack found himself leaning forward, drinking in every word of hope. "The nightmares," Jack finally spoke, his voice rough. How did you get past them?" "We didn't get past them," David answered gently. "We learned to face them, to remember that we're not there anymore, that we're home." Mike pulled out his phone and showed Jack a picture of his family. "These faces, they're what I focus on now when the memories come. Not to forget the past, but to remember why I'm fighting to heal." The other men shared their strategies: prayer, meditation, breathing exercises, scripture verses that brought comfort in the dark hours. Jack wrote each one down in the back of the devotional David had given him. As the meeting ended, the men gathered around Jack. Without ceremony or awkwardness, they laid their hands on his shoulders and prayed. Their words were simple but powerful, asking for peace, for healing, for restoration with Emily. Jack drove home with the devotional on the passenger seat beside him. The weight of it felt like a lifeline, a tangible reminder that he wasn't alone in this battle anymore. In his bedroom, Jack picked up the framed photo of Emily from his bedside table. Her smile beamed up at him, full of the innocent joy he was fighting to protect. He placed the devotional next to it, then knelt beside his bed. For a long moment, he was silent, his hand resting on the book's worn cover. Then, in a whisper barely audible in the quiet room, he prayed, "Lord, give me strength, not just for me, for her." The autumn breeze carried the scent of cotton candy and caramel apples across the community fairgrounds. Jack Reynolds adjusted his volunteer badge, standing behind a table filled with colorful craft supplies at the children's activity booth. His hands, once trained for combat, now carefully arranged bottles of glue and containers of glitter. "You're a natural with the kids, Jack," Maria Lopez said, appearing beside him with a box of paper plates. She watched him help a small boy create a sparkly pinwheel. "I think it's the patience in your voice." Jack managed a small smile. "Thanks for suggesting I volunteer here. It feels good to create instead of—" He stopped himself, focusing on straightening a stack of construction paper. The fair bustled around them, filled with families enjoying the weekend festivities. Children's laughter mixed with carnival music, and bright balloons bobbed in the gentle wind. Jack had been helping kids make crafts for over an hour when he heard a familiar voice. "Daddy!" His heart leaped as Emily ran toward the booth, her grandparents following a few steps behind. She wore her favorite purple dress, the one with tiny butterflies that reminded him so much of her mother. "Hey, sweetheart," Jack said softly, his eyes meeting his daughter's bright gaze. He glanced uncertainly at her grandparents, who stood at a distance, their expressions guarded but not hostile. Maria stepped forward, her warm presence diffusing the tension. "Emily, would you like to help us make some crafts? Your daddy's been teaching the children how to make beautiful pinwheels." Emily nodded eagerly, looking to her grandparents for permission. After a moment's hesitation, they nodded. and Emily slipped behind the table to stand next to her father. Jack pulled up a small chair for her, his movements gentle and measured. "Here you go, princess. Want to help me show the other kids how it's done?" For the next hour, Jack and Emily worked side by side, helping children create colorful crafts. He noticed how she mimicked his patient instructions, her small voice confident as she showed younger children where to place their stickers. His chest swelled with pride, watching her natural kindness shine through. "You're doing great, Em," he whispered, and her answering smile lit up his world. The afternoon wore on, and more families crowded the fairgrounds. Emily's grandparents had wandered off to get some lunch, trusting Maria's presence as chaperone. Jack noticed Emily growing more comfortable, venturing a few steps away from the booth to greet friends from school. Then suddenly, his daughter wasn't in sight. "Emily!" Jack called, scanning the crowd. A flash of purple caught his eye, but it disappeared behind a group of teenagers. His heart rate quickened, but his military training kicked in. Stay calm, think clearly, track methodically. "I'll watch the booth," Maria said, understanding immediately. "Go find her." Jack moved through the crowd with purpose, his eyes sweeping left to right. He heard it before he saw her, a small, frightened sob coming from behind the cotton candy stand. Emily stood frozen, her eyes wide with panic as strangers rushed past her. "Daddy?" Her voice trembled. Jack was there in an instant, dropping to one knee before her. "I'm here, sweetheart, I'm right here!" He kept his voice steady and soft, just like he'd practiced in therapy. No sudden movements, no loud sounds. Emily's lower lip quivered. "I got lost. There were too many people and I couldn't." Her breath hitched with the beginning of a panic attack. "Hey, look at me," Jack said gently, holding out his hands but not grabbing her. "Remember our special breathing, like we practiced with Dr. Sarah?" Emily nodded, her eyes locked on his. "That's my girl. In through your nose like you're smelling cookies." She took a shaky breath. "And out through your mouth like you're cooling soup." They breathed together, Jack maintaining eye contact, his presence solid and reassuring. Slowly, Emily's shoulders relaxed. "You found me," she whispered, wonder replacing fear in her voice. "I'll always find you, Emily. Always." Jack opened his arms, letting her choose to come to him. She didn't hesitate. Emily threw herself into his embrace, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Jack held her close, one hand gently stroking her hair, the other secure around her back. He could feel her heart racing against his chest, but it was steadying now, matching his calm rhythm. The crowd continued to move around them, but Jack created a bubble of safety right there behind the cotton candy stand. He didn't rush her, didn't try to move. He just held his daughter, letting her feel his strength and stability. After a few moments, Emily's grip loosened slightly, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she pressed her face into his neck and whispered the words he'd been longing to hear. "I want to go home with you, Daddy." Jack's heart soared, but he kept his voice steady. "I want that too, sweetheart. So much." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, seeing trust there instead of fear. The moment stretched between them, perfect and precious. The morning sun filtered through Jack Reynolds' kitchen window as he sipped his coffee, still riding the high from Emily's words at the fair. "I want to go home with you, Daddy." Those precious words had played on repeat in his mind for days, giving him strength through his therapy sessions and veteran support group meetings. A knock at the door interrupted his peaceful moment. Jack's boots clicked against the hardwood floor as he made his way to answer it. A man in a crisp suit stood there, holding a manila envelope. "Mr. Reynolds?" The man's voice was professionally detached. "You've been served." The envelope felt heavy in Jack's hands as the process server walked away. His fingers trembled as he tore it open, coffee forgotten on the counter. The legal documents spilled out onto his dining room table, each page more devastating than the last. Emily's maternal grandparents were filing for permanent custody. Jack's legs gave out, and he dropped into a kitchen chair. His eyes scanned the cruel words: endangerment, psychological trauma, unfit parent. They had attached his complete military medical records every therapy session, every PTSD diagnosis, every prescribed medication. Beside these were detailed accounts of Emily's panic attacks, carefully documented by her grandparents. He pushed away from the table and paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. The room felt too small, too confined. His breathing quickened as he read further. They'd even included statements from neighbors who had heard his night terrors through the walls. Jack stumbled to Emily's room, where her stuffed animals sat in perfect rows on her perfectly made bed. He picked up her favorite teddy bear, the one she'd had since she was 3. The bear's fur was worn smooth from countless nights of comfort. "I thought I was getting better," he whispered to the empty room. The walls seemed to close in, decorated with Emily's artwork crayon drawings of their family. Just the two of them, holding hands under a bright yellow Sunday. His phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Everything okay? Saw someone at your door earlier." Jack couldn't bring himself to respond. He wandered through the house like a ghost, touching Emily's things, her backpack hanging by the door, her favorite cereal bowl in the dish rack, the small shoes lined up by the front door, the therapy sessions, the support groups, the church activities. All of it felt hollow now. How could any judge look past the stark reality of those medical records? The clinical descriptions of his condition made him sound like a ticking time bomb. In the living room, family photos smiled down at him from the walls. Emily's mother, Sarah, beamed in their wedding picture. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her image. "I'm failing her. I'm failing both of you." The afternoon light faded into evening. Jack hadn't eaten, hadn't returned calls. The custody papers lay scattered across his coffee table, a roadmap of his failures. Each page detailed another reason he wasn't fit to be a father: the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the occasional flashbacks. He thought of Emily's face at the fair, how she'd buried herself in his arms when he found her in the crowd. But now that memory competed with others, her tear-stained face after his nightmares woke her, her tiny hands covering her ears when he shouted in his sleep. The darkness crept in as Jack sat motionless on his couch. He didn't bother turning on the lights. The glow from the street lamp outside cast long shadows across the room, across the damning papers that threatened to destroy everything he'd fought for. His fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. The same hands that had once protected his country, that had cradled Emily as a newborn, that had tried so hard to hold his family together, they felt useless now. "Maybe they're right," he whispered into the darkness, his voice breaking. The words tasted like defeat on his tongue, but they kept coming. Maybe they're right. The confession hung in the air of his dark living room, as heavy as the metals in his drawer upstairs, as crushing as the weight he'd carried since returning from war. For the first time since losing Sarah, since the custody battle began, Jack Reynolds allowed himself to consider the unthinkable, that perhaps his daughter would be better off without him. The untouched bottle of whiskey sat on Jack Reynolds' coffee table like a silent tempter. Dust coated its surface, 3 years' worth, to be exact. He'd stored it away the day Emily was born, promising himself he'd be the father she deserved. Evening shadows crept across his living room as he stared at the amber liquid. His phone buzzed again. Another reminder about his counseling session. Jack switched it off. The custody papers lay scattered across the table, their legal jargon swimming before his tired eyes. "What's the point?" he muttered, reaching for the bottle. His hand trembled as he broke the seal. The familiar scent hit him, bringing memories of nights spent trying to drown out the echoes of war. The doorbell rang. Jack ignored it, unscrewing the cap slowly. The chime sounded again, more insistent this time. "Jack Reynolds, I know you're in there." Maria's voice carried through the door, firm but gentle. "Your truck's outside, and your porch light is on." He sighed heavily, shoulders slumping. After a long moment, he called out, "It's open." Maria Lopez stepped inside, her kind eyes taking in the scene, the scattered papers, the open bottle, Jack's unshaven face. She closed the door quietly behind her, but her presence filled the room like a warm light. "You missed dinner at church tonight," she said, settling into the armchair across from him. "Emily asked about you." Jack's throat tightened. "Did she?" She showed everyone her art project, that painting of you two at the beach." Maria's gaze fell to the bottle. "This isn't the answer, Jack. They have my full military psychiatric record," he said, his voice rough. "Every nightmare, every flashback, every moment I wasn't strong enough." His words caught. "Maybe Emily would be better off." "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Maria's tone was sharp but loving. "That little girl doesn't need a perfect father. She needs you. You didn't read these papers." Jack grabbed one from the table, his hand shaking. They documented every time she woke up crying because of my screams, every panic attack, And did those papers mention how you taught her to ride a bike? How you braid her hair every morning? How you sit through every tea party with Mr. Whiskers? Jack's eyes burned. That doesn't erase the damage I've caused. Maria leaned forward, her face serious. Let me tell you something about damage, Jack Reynolds. My Alberto, God rest his soul, he came back from Vietnam, a changed man, had his own demons to fight. But he fought them, not just for himself, but for me and our children. She reached across and took the bottle from his loose grip. The real damage happens when we give up. When we let despair tell us lies about who we are and what we're capable of. Jack buried his face in his hands. I'm so tired, Maria. Tired of fighting. Tired of failing. Then let others help you fight. She touched his shoulder gently. That's what community is for. That's what faith is for. Emily doesn't need you to be unbroken. She needs to see you getting back up every time you fall. The truth of her words pierced through his fog of self-doubt. He thought of Emily's face at the fair, how she'd clung to him when he found her in the crowd. She hadn't run from him. She'd run to him. The court wants to see progress, Maria continued. They want to see a father who's willing to do whatever it takes for his child. Are you that father, Jack? He lifted his head, meeting her steady gaze. The answer came from somewhere deep inside, where his love for Emily burned stronger than his fear. Yes. Then prove it. Maria stood, picking up the bottle. Starting with this. Jack rose slowly, taking the whiskey from her. He walked to the kitchen sink, his steps growing more certain with each stride. Without hesitation, he tilted the bottle, watching the amber liquid spiral down the drain. The empty bottle made a hollow sound as he set it down. Jack's hand found his Bible on the counter, the one his unit chaplain had given him years ago. His fingers traced the worn leather cover. I'm not done fighting, he whispered. And for the first time in days, his voice held no trace of defeat. Maria smiled from the kitchen doorway. No, she said softly. You're not. And you're not fighting alone. The setting sun cast long shadows through the kitchen window. But Jack stood straighter now, his jaw set with renewed determination. The custody papers still waited on his coffee table, but they no longer held the power to crush his spirit. He had a daughter to fight for, and that was all that mattered. Jack gripped his Bible tighter and repeated with stronger conviction, I'm not done fighting. The fluorescent lights of the VA Counseling Center buzzed overhead as Jack Reynolds shifted in the hard plastic chair. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap, knuckles white. Around him sat a circle of veterans, men and women who carried their own invisible wounds of war. Welcome back, Jack, Dr. Peterson said, her voice gentle but firm. We missed you last session. Jack cleared his throat. The shame of his near slip with the whiskey still burned, but Maria's words echoed in his mind. Emily needed him, not his perfection. I almost gave up, he admitted, his voice rough. Got served papers for permanent custody loss. The room grew still. These warriors understood loss. They lived with it daily. But I'm here, Jack continued, stronger now. Because my daughter deserves a father who fights for her, not one who surrenders. Mike, a former Marine with scarred hands, leaned forward. Brother, we've got your back. Every single one of us knows what those nightmares do. Jack's eyes burned as he looked around the circle. These people knew his darkness because they shared it. The court says my PTSD makes me unfit, he said. That my nightmares terrify my little girl. Tell us about the nightmares, Jack, Dr. Peterson encouraged. What happens when they come? For the first time since joining the group, Jack didn't deflect. I'm back there, he whispered. The explosion. The kids we couldn't save. Their faces. They follow me into the dark. His hands trembled slightly. I wake up screaming, and Emily, my sweet Emily, she hears it all. Sarah, an Army medic who'd served 3 tours, spoke up. My son used to hear me too. Want to know what helped? Jack nodded, desperate for anything that might work. I started telling him stories before bed. Good ones, about the people we did save. About the strength we found in each other. Changed the narrative for both of us. The group murmured in agreement. Dr. Peterson made notes, her face encouraging. I want to testify for you, Mike said suddenly. Let the court see who you really are. A warrior who's healing, not hiding anymore. One by one, the others joined in. Me too. Count me in. We stand together. Jack's chest tightened with emotion. Here was the brotherhood he'd missed since leaving the SEALs. Not in combat, but in healing. After the session, they gathered in the parking lot. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of approaching autumn. Mike handed Jack a business card. My lawyer. She specializes in veteran custody cases. Don't fight this alone, brother. Back home, Jack found Maria waiting on her porch. She'd been his anchor through this storm, never judging, always steady. How did it go? She asked, her warm eyes concerned. Better than I expected, Jack admitted. The group, they want to help. With the custody case. Maria smiled. God works in mysterious ways, Jack. Sometimes he sends an army of angels wearing combat boots. They sat together on Maria's porch steps, the setting sun painting the sky in gentle pinks and purples. Would you help me practice? Jack asked. My testimony for court? I need to find the right words. Of course, Maria said softly. Jack stood, pacing slightly as he gathered his thoughts. The words came slowly at first, then gained strength. Your Honor, I am a decorated Navy SEAL. I've served my country with honor. But my greatest battle isn't overseas. It's right here, fighting for my daughter. He paused, drawing a deep breath. I have PTSD. It's not who I am, but it's part of my story. I've had nightmares that scared my little girl. That shame nearly broke me, but instead of hiding from it, I'm facing it. Every day in counseling, every night when I pray, I'm working to heal. Maria watched silently, her presence encouraging him to continue. Emily isn't just my daughter. She's my reason to keep fighting, to be better. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for the chance to show her that real strength isn't in never falling, but in getting back up. His voice grew stronger, more confident. I have a community supporting me now. Fellow veterans who understand. Neighbors who believe in me. He glanced at Maria with gratitude. I'm not the same man who stood in this court months ago. I'm learning, growing, healing. Jack's hands were steady now, his voice clear. I'm not asking you to forget my struggles. I'm asking you to see my progress, to give Emily the father she deserves. Not a perfect one, but one who loves her enough to face his demons and fight for her future. When he finished, Maria wiped tears from her eyes. That's it, Jack. That's the truth they need to hear. Behind them, a small group had gathered, his brothers and sisters from the counseling group, who'd followed him home to show support. They stood quietly, some nodding, others wiping their eyes. Mike stepped forward. Now that's a testimony worth standing behind, brother. The court needs to hear this. All of it. No shame, no hiding. Just truth. Jack looked at these warriors, these healers, these friends who'd become family. For the first time in months, he felt truly strong. Not because he was perfect, but because he was no longer alone in his battle. Emily's worth every bit of this fight, he said firmly. And I'm not giving up. The group surrounded him, their presence a shield of support. In their faces, Jack saw his own journey reflected, the pain, the struggle, and most importantly, the hope. They understood what he was fighting for, because each of them had fought their own battles with the shadows of war. As the evening deepened, they shared stories of their own victories over trauma, their voices mixing with the chirping of crickets and the gentle rustling of leaves. Each tale was a testament to resilience, to the power of community, to the possibility of healing. The afternoon sun streamed through the bay window of Maria Lopez's cozy living room, casting warm patches of light on the worn carpet. Emily Reynolds sat cross-legged on the floor, her small fingers wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate that Maria had carefully made, not too hot. The marshmallows had long since melted, leaving just a thin white film on top. Your grandma makes good cookies, Maria said, settling into her favorite armchair with her own cup of tea. She'd gotten permission from Emily's grandparents to have the girl over for a few hours, a small victory in building trust between all parties. Emily nodded, but her usual brightness was dimmed. She traced the rim of her mug with one finger. Her shoulders slumped under the weight of thoughts too heavy for a 6-year-old. What's on your mind, sweetheart? Maria asked softly. Emily's lower lip trembled. Grandma and Grandpa say Daddy is sick in his head from the war. She looked up at Maria with wide, troubled eyes. But he's not sick like when I get a cold. He just gets scared at night, like I do sometimes. Maria set her tea aside and moved to sit on the floor next to Emily. That's right. Your daddy saw some very scary things when he was a soldier, and sometimes he remembers them in his sleep. I love Daddy, Emily whispered, her voice catching. But when he yells in his sleep. She hugged herself tightly, the mug forgotten on the coffee table. It's okay to feel scared sometimes, Maria assured her, gently rubbing Emily's back. And it's also okay to love your daddy at the same time. Both feelings can be true. Emily leaned against Maria's shoulder. Grandma gets mad when I say I miss Daddy. She says he needs to get better first. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I want him to get better with me there. Your grandparents love you very much, Maria said carefully. They want to keep you safe. And your daddy loves you so much that he's working very hard to get better. Going to special doctors and talking about his feelings. Like my counselor at school? Just like that, Maria smiled. But you know what might help everyone? Emily looked up curiously. If you tell them exactly what you told me, how you feel about everything. It's okay to tell your daddy when you're scared. And it's okay to tell your grandparents when you miss him. Emily's forehead wrinkled in thought. But what if it makes them sad? Sometimes the truth can make people a little sad, Maria acknowledged. But hiding our feelings usually makes things worse. Your daddy and your grandparents all want what's best for you. Being honest helps them understand how to help you better. Emily was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then she straightened up suddenly. Can I draw a picture? Of course, Maria said, reaching for the art supplies she kept specifically for Emily's visits. She spread crayons and paper on the coffee table. Emily worked with intense concentration, her tongue poking out slightly. She drew careful stick figures, a tall one with brown hair like her dad's, a figure with wings and a yellow halo that could only be her mother in heaven, 2 older figures holding hands that were clearly her grandparents, and a smiling figure with black hair that looked suspiciously like Maria. That's beautiful, Maria said softly. Is that for your daddy? Emily nodded, adding final touches of color. It's all the people who love me. She paused, crayon hovering over the paper. Even if they don't always love each other. Maria felt her heart squeeze. Sometimes grown-ups forget that love isn't about being perfect. It's about trying our best and not giving up. Just then, they heard the familiar sound of Jack's truck pulling up outside. He was right on time to pick Emily up for their supervised evening visit. Emily gathered her drawing carefully, smoothing out the corners. When Jack knocked and Maria opened the door, Emily ran to him, picture held high. Daddy, I made this for you. Jack knelt down to her level, taking the drawing with gentle hands. His eyes moved over each figure, lingering on the angel that represented his late wife. Then he noticed how Emily had drawn everyone holding hands in a circle, connected despite their differences. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he tried to blink them away. But Emily saw them and reached out to touch his cheek. It's okay, Daddy, she said with the simple wisdom of children. Maria says it's okay to feel things. Jack pulled Emily into a tight hug, one tear escaping down his cheek. Over her shoulder, his eyes met Maria's, filled with gratitude and something deeper, hope. Maria watched them, father and daughter holding each other, the drawing caught carefully between them. The afternoon sun painted them in warm light, and for a moment, all the complications and court battles faded away. There was just love. Imperfect, struggling, healing love. The morning sun filtered through the tall courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the polished wooden benches. Jack Reynolds sat perfectly still, his military training evident in his rigid posture. But his eyes betrayed a deep weariness. His Navy SEAL uniform had been replaced by a modest gray suit that Maria had helped him pick out. Emily perched between her grandparents on the opposite side of the courtroom, her small legs dangling above the floor. She wore a blue dress with white flowers, her hair neatly braided, her grandmother's touch. Every few minutes, her eyes would dart to her father, a mixture of love and uncertainty in her gaze. Judge Harrison, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, looked over the assembled parties. The courtroom was quiet except for the soft whir of the ceiling fans and the occasional shuffle of papers. Mr. Peterson, the grandparents' lawyer, stood up smoothly, His expensive suit and confident demeanor contrasted sharply with Jack's humble appearance. "Your Honor, we're here today because Mr. Reynolds' ongoing psychological issues pose a clear and present danger to his daughter's well-being." Jack's hands tightened in his lap, but he remained silent, remembering his lawyer's advice to stay calm no matter what was said. Maria, sitting directly behind him, leaned forward slightly, her presence a quiet reminder of support. "We have documentation," Peterson continued, lifting a thick folder, "of multiple incidents where Emily Reynolds has experienced severe panic attacks directly related to her father's night terrors." He approached the bench, handing copies to both the judge and Jack's lawyer. "These medical records show a clear pattern of distress in the child. Emily's grandmother, Margaret Wilson, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Her husband, Robert, kept his arm protectively around Emily, who seemed to shrink under the weight of the adult's attention. Furthermore," Peterson's voice grew harder, "Mr. Reynolds has admitted to experiencing violent flashbacks from his military service. While we respect his service to our country, we must consider the impact of his PTSD on his young daughter." Jack closed his eyes briefly, offering a silent prayer. The words stung, but they weren't entirely untrue. He had experienced flashbacks. He had scared Emily with his nightmares. The truth of it made the pain sharper. "The Wilsons have provided Emily with stability and security." Peterson gestured toward the grandparents. "In the 3 months she's been in their primary care, her panic attacks have decreased significantly. She's sleeping through the night, her appetite has improved, and her teacher reports better concentration at school." Emily fidgeted with the hem of her dress, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the adults discussed her life as if she weren't there. Jack wanted desperately to go to her, to tell her everything would be okay. But he remained in his seat, his jaw clenched. Peterson approached a large easel, flipping through several charts. "These graphs show Emily's stress levels before and after being placed with her grandparents. The difference is stark, Your Honor." He pointed to various peaks and valleys in the data. "The red lines indicate nights where Mr. Reynolds' episodes directly triggered Emily's panic attacks." Jack's lawyer, Sarah Martinez, made notes on her legal pad, her expression neutral. They had prepared for this, but hearing it laid out so clinically made Jack's stomach churn. "Additionally," Peterson continued, "we have statements from Emily's pediatrician, her school counselor, and her teacher." He produced more documents. All of them express concern about the emotional impact of Mr. Reynolds' condition on his daughter. Margaret Wilson was called to testify first. She spoke in a trembling voice about finding Emily hiding in closets during visits to Jack's house, about late-night phone calls when the girl was too scared to sleep, about the way Emily would flinch at loud noises after spending time with her father. Jack felt each word like a physical blow, but he kept his face composed. He thought of his therapy sessions, of the progress he'd made, of the nights now when he could sleep without screaming. But would it be enough? Robert Wilson's testimony followed his wife's. His voice was stern as he described his son-in-law's unstable condition. He spoke about their daughter, Emily's mother, and how she would have wanted Emily to be safe and secure. The implied criticism was clear. Jack had failed to provide either. Through it all, Emily sat quietly, her small shoulders hunched. Once, when her grandfather mentioned Jack's nightmares, she glanced at her father with tears in her eyes. Jack managed a small, reassuring smile, though his heart was breaking. Maria reached forward and squeezed Jack's shoulder gently. Behind her sat several members of his veteran support group, their presence a silent testament to his journey toward healing. They had all warned him this would be the hardest part, sitting still while others painted him as a danger to his own child. The medical experts came next, speaking in clinical terms about trauma, stress responses, and the impact of secondary PTSD on children. They showed brain scans, quoted statistics, and built what seemed like an insurmountable wall between Jack and his daughter. Emily's school counselor described how the girl had trouble concentrating after weekend visits with her father, how she would sometimes cry during recess for no apparent reason. The teacher talked about Emily's improved performance since living with her grandparents, carefully avoiding direct criticism of Jack while making it clear where she thought the child belonged. Through each testimony, Jack remained still, his military training helping him maintain his composure. He focused on his breathing, just as he'd learned in therapy. In, out, steady, controlled. He thought of Emily's crayon drawing, now carefully preserved in a folder in his lawyer's briefcase. Evidence of a different kind, showing love rather than fear. Finally, Peterson concluded his presentation. Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows that while Mr. Reynolds may love his daughter, his ongoing psychological issues make him unsuitable for primary custody. We ask the court to grant permanent custody to Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, with supervised visitation for Mr. Reynolds pending significant improvement in his condition. Judge Harrison looked over her glasses at Jack, then at Emily, who was now openly crying, though silently. The judge's expression softened slightly at the sight of the distressed child. Mr. Reynolds, Judge Harrison said, her voice firm but not unkind, please approach the stand. Jack stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the courtroom. His legs felt heavy as he walked to the witness stand, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it on the Bible. He looked at Emily, then at the judge, drawing a deep breath to steady himself. The courtroom air felt thick with tension as Jack settled into the witness stand. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his navy blue tie, the one Emily had picked out for him last Father's Day. The familiar faces of Maria, his veteran brothers, and his in-laws blurred together in the gallery behind the polished wooden barrier. Please state your name for the record, the court clerk announced. Jack Reynolds, he answered, his voice steadier than he expected. Years of military training had taught him to remain composed under pressure, but this was different. This wasn't about following orders or completing missions. This was about his little girl. The judge nodded, and Jack's attorney stepped forward. Mr. Reynolds, could you tell the court about your relationship with your daughter? Jack took a deep breath, his gaze drifting to Emily, who sat between her grandparents. She wore the yellow dress with tiny daisies that she loved so much, her small feet barely touching the floor. Emily is everything to me, he began, his voice soft but clear. After losing her mother, she became my anchor, my reason to keep going. He paused, swallowing hard. But I haven't always been the father she deserves. The admission hung in the air. Jack could feel the grandparents' eyes boring into him, but he pressed on. I came back from my last deployment with scars that weren't visible. The nightmares. They started small at first, but they got worse. His fingers curled around the edge of the witness stand. I thought I could handle it alone. I was wrong. The attorney nodded encouragingly. And how did these nightmares affect Emily? Jack's voice cracked slightly. She would hear me screaming in my sleep. Sometimes I'd wake up to find her crying in her room, afraid to come near me. The memory cut deep, and he had to pause to steady himself. No child should have to be afraid of their own father. From the gallery, he caught Maria's reassuring nod. She sat with several of his veteran group members, their presence a silent reminder that he wasn't alone anymore. What steps have you taken to address these issues, Mr. Reynolds? I joined a veteran support group, Jack explained, straightening his shoulders. Twice a week, we meet to share our struggles and support each other. I've been seeing a counselor who specializes in military trauma. He's helping me understand that seeking help isn't weakness, it's strength. The attorney retrieved a folder from his desk. And how long have you been attending these sessions? 3 months now. I haven't missed a single meeting. Jack's voice grew stronger. I've learned techniques to manage the nightmares. I keep a journal. I pray. When things get tough, I have people I can call my veteran brothers, Maria from next door, my counselor. And how have these changes affected your relationship with Emily? Jack's eyes softened as he looked at his daughter again. We're rebuilding trust, day by day. I'm learning to be honest with her about my struggles, in ways she can understand. When I feel anxious, I tell her. When I need a moment to breathe, I explain why. No more pretending everything's fine when it isn't. The attorney nodded. What would you like the court to know about your ability to care for Emily? Jack squared his shoulders, meeting the judge's gaze directly. Your Honor, I'm not here to claim I'm perfect. I'm not here to promise I'll never have another nightmare or difficult day. But I am here to say that I'm fighting not just for myself, but for my daughter. His voice grew passionate but controlled. Every step I take in therapy, every prayer I say, every morning I wake up and choose to face my demons instead of running from them, it's all for her. I'm learning that being a good father isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up and showing your child that it's okay to be human, to struggle, to need help sometimes. The courtroom remained silent as Jack continued. Emily deserves a father who's whole and healthy. I'm not there yet, but I'm on that path. All I'm asking for is the chance to keep loving her while I heal. To show her that even broken things can be made beautiful again." He could feel tears threatening, but he didn't try to hide them. "She's all I have left of her mother, and every day I see Rachel's kindness in Emily's smile, her strength in Emily's spirit. I can't," his voice caught, "I can't lose that too." The silence in the courtroom was profound. Even Emily's grandparents seemed moved, though they tried to hide it. Maria dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, and several of his veteran brothers nodded in understanding. Just then, a small commotion broke out. Emily had slipped from her grandparents' grasp and was running across the courtroom floor, her patent leather shoes clicking against the tiles. Before anyone could stop her, she had thrown herself into Jack's arms, climbing onto his lap in the witness stand. "Daddy makes me feel safe now," she declared clearly, her small arms wrapped around his neck. The words rang out in the hushed courtroom, pure and true, as only a child's voice could be. Jack held her close, tears falling freely now as he pressed his face into her hair. The courtroom remained perfectly still, as if frozen in time by the power of this simple moment between father and daughter. Judge Harmon adjusted his glasses, the wood of his gavel smooth beneath his weathered fingers. The late afternoon sun filtered through the courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath, waiting. Jack's heart thundered in his chest. Emily sat between her grandparents, her small hands folded in her lap, her eyes darting between the judge and her father. Maria, from her seat in the gallery, clasped her hands in silent prayer. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence presented, Judge Harmon began, his voice carrying the weight of authority tempered with compassion. "This court has reached a decision regarding the custody of Emily Reynolds." The judge paused, looking directly at Jack. "Mr. Reynolds, your honest admission of your struggles and your demonstrated commitment to healing have not gone unnoticed. This court appreciates the steps you've taken to address your PTSD and create a safer environment for your daughter." Jack's throat tightened. He felt a gentle touch on his arm, his lawyer giving him a reassuring pat. "Similarly," the judge continued, turning to Emily's grandparents, "the court recognizes your deep love for your granddaughter and your legitimate concerns for her well-being. Your dedication to Emily's safety is commendable." Emily's grandmother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, while her grandfather sat straight-backed, his expression unreadable. The goal of this court has always been to ensure the best interests of the child. Judge Harmon's gaze settled on Emily, his stern features softening, and in this case, it's clear that Emily needs both her father and her grandparents in her life. Jack's hands trembled slightly. He pressed them flat against the table to steady them. "Therefore, this court orders shared custody between Jack Reynolds and Emily's maternal grandparents." The judge's words rang clear in the hushed courtroom. "Mr. Reynolds will have Emily 3 days per week and alternate weekends, with the schedule to be agreed upon by both parties." Relief flooded through Jack's body. He wasn't losing his daughter. The judge wasn't done, though. "This arrangement is contingent upon Mr. Reynolds maintaining his current course of counseling and providing quarterly updates to the court on his progress." Judge Harmon leaned forward slightly. "Additionally, both parties will participate in family counseling to ensure smooth transitions for Emily between homes." Emily's face broke into a wide smile, and she bounced slightly in her seat. Her grandmother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder to still her. "Mr. Reynolds," the judge addressed Jack directly, "this court believes in second chances, but more importantly, it believes in the power of a parent's love to overcome obstacles. You've shown remarkable courage in facing your demons for the sake of your daughter." Jack swallowed hard, managing a quiet, "Thank you, Your Honor." "To Emily's grandparents," the judge continued, "your role in providing stability during this difficult time has been crucial. This arrangement ensures you remain an important part of Emily's life, while allowing her father to continue his journey of healing." The grandfather nodded stiffly, while the grandmother wiped fresh tears. "Court costs will be split equally between the parties." Judge Harmon picked up his gavel. "This court stands adjourned." The sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the room. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Emily broke free from her grandparents and ran straight to Jack. He knelt down, catching her in his arms, holding her close as if she might disappear. "Daddy," she whispered against his neck, "we can go home sometimes now?" "Yes, sweetheart," Jack managed, his voice thick with emotion. "We can go home sometimes now." The grandparents approached slowly, their faces a mix of resignation and acceptance. Jack stood, keeping one hand on Emily's shoulder. "We'll make this work," he said quietly to them. "For Emily's sake." Emily's grandfather extended his hand after a moment's hesitation. "For Emily's sake," he agreed as Jack shook it. People began filing out of the courtroom. Maria waited patiently by the door, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. As Jack gathered his papers and Emily's small backpack, his lawyer shook his hand firmly. "Congratulations," the lawyer said. "You earned this." Jack nodded, too overwhelmed for words. He took Emily's hand, and together they walked toward the courthouse exit. Maria fell into step beside them, her presence steady and comforting as always. The afternoon sun felt warmer somehow as they stepped outside, the spring breeze carrying the scent of nearby flowering trees. Emily skipped slightly between steps, her hand still firmly in Jack's, while Maria walked beside them, her quiet smile reflecting the hope they all felt. For the first time in months, Jack felt like he could breathe freely. It wasn't perfect. Sharing custody wasn't the same as having Emily home full-time. But it was a victory. The court had officially recognized him as a fit father, capable of caring for his daughter despite his struggles. More importantly, Emily would be coming home. They paused at the top of the courthouse steps, watching other people come and go. Emily tugged on Jack's hand, looking up at him with those big eyes that always melted his heart. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked hopefully. Jack glanced at Maria, who nodded encouragingly. "I think," he said, squeezing Emily's hand, "that's exactly what we should do." The autumn evening wrapped Jack's small house in golden light. Through the kitchen window, maple leaves danced on the breeze, their colors matching the warmth inside. Jack stood at the stove, stirring a pot of his mother's chicken noodle soup recipe, Emily's favorite. The familiar aroma filled the kitchen with memories of comfort and home. At the kitchen table, Emily sat with her legs swinging, bent over a fresh sheet of paper, colored pencils scattered around her like a rainbow. Her tongue poked out slightly as she concentrated on her drawing, a habit that reminded Jack so much of her mother it made his heart ache with sweetness instead of pain. "What are you creating there, sweetheart?" Jack asked, adding a pinch of herbs to the soup. Emily held up her artwork proudly. "It's us, Daddy. See? That's you making dinner, and that's me helping. And there's Maria's house next door with all her flowers." Jack smiled at the crayon version of their life. Stick figures with oversized smiles, their house a cheerful square with a red door. She'd even drawn his truck in the driveway, though it looked more like a blue box with wheels. "That's beautiful, honey. Why don't you sign your name while I get our bowls ready?" Steam rose from the soup as Jack ladled it carefully into their favorite bowls. Emily's with tiny painted butterflies around the rim. His solid blue one chipped slightly at the edge. The kitchen timer dinged, and he pulled a pan of warm cornbread from the oven. They sat together, father and daughter, in the gentle quiet of their evening routine. Emily dunked her cornbread in her soup, giggling as the broth dripped down her chin. Jack handed her a napkin, his heart full at the sound of her laughter. "Daddy," Emily asked between bites, "can we read 2 stories tonight instead of 1? How about we read 1 story, and then I'll sing you that song Grandma taught you?" Jack countered, watching her eyes light up at the compromise. After dinner, they worked together to clean up, Emily carefully carrying her bowl to the sink, while Jack stored the leftover soup. She insisted on drying the not-breakable dishes, standing on her step stool beside him as he washed. Bath time followed, with Emily making her rubber duck perform spectacular diving acts while Jack shampooed her hair. She'd stopped being afraid of getting water in her eyes, trusting him to shield them with his cupped hand as he rinsed. In her room, Emily chose her favorite purple pajamas with white stars. Jack helped her button the top, then watched as she arranged her stuffed animals just right on her bed. The nightlight cast a soft glow across her freshly painted walls, a project they'd completed together last weekend, turning the plain white into a gentle sky blue. "Which book tonight, Princess?" Jack asked, settling into the wooden rocking chair beside her bed. It was the same chair where he'd rocked her as a baby, where her mother had sung lullabies. Emily pulled out The Velveteen Rabbit, clutching it to her chest. "This one, Daddy." "I like when you do the rabbit's voice," Jack read slowly, letting Emily study each illustration. When they reached the part about becoming real, she traced the words with her small finger, reading along with him. Her eyelids grew heavy, but she fought sleep until the very last page. Setting the book aside, Jack knelt beside her bed. Emily snuggled deeper under her quilt, her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. The fear that used to shadow her face at bedtime had vanished, replaced by peaceful trust. "Time for our prayer?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, folding her hands atop her blanket. Jack covered them with his own larger ones, bowing his head. "Dear Lord," he began, his voice gentle in the quiet room. "Thank you for this beautiful day with Emily. Thank you for our home, for the food we shared, and for all the people who love us. Please watch over Emily as she sleeps. Fill her dreams with joy, and help her feel your love surrounding her. Thank you for healing our family and teaching us to trust again. Amen." "Amen," Emily echoed sleepily. Her eyes fluttered closed as Jack leaned down to kiss her forehead. "I love you, Daddy," she murmured. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars in the sky." Jack stood quietly, watching as Emily's breathing deepened into sleep. No tension lined her small face, no worry about what the night might bring. The peace in her expression mirrored the calm in his own heart. He adjusted her nightlight and pulled her door almost closed, leaving it open just enough for the hallway light to peek through. For a moment, he stood in the doorway, offering a silent prayer of gratitude for how far they'd come. The soft creak of the porch swing caught his attention. Maria would be waiting outside, as she often did these evenings. Jack checked the kitchen locks, then stepped out onto the front porch. The night air carried the scent of Maria's garden, late-blooming roses and herbs she'd planted in window boxes. She sat on the porch swing, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the autumn chill. "Emily's asleep?" she asked, her voice warm with caring. Jack nodded, joining her on the swing. "Out like a light. No more fear, no more nightmares, just peace." "God is good," Maria said simply. "He is," Jack agreed. "And so are you, Maria. I never properly thanked you for believing in me, for standing by us when everyone else thought I was a lost cause." Maria turned to face him, her eyes soft in the porch light. Without a word, she slipped her hand into his. Her touch was warm, steady, like everything about her. Above them, the night sky sprawled vast and beautiful. Stars punctured the darkness with pinpoints of light, a glittering testament to hope and healing. Jack squeezed Maria's hand gently, feeling the quiet rightness of the moment settle around them. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Reynolds, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.